I've done a lot of videos talking about physical media. It's going to be my last one, probably, especially as we approach the new year. I talk about my iPod as well. Now is the best time, or now I would say now is the crucial time. If anybody's interested in physical media, or even interested in, like, at some point getting into collecting, it's not expensive. That's the thing to realize is it doesn't cost a lot nowadays to get DVDs and Blu-rays. I'm finding some Blu-rays are even cheaper than DVDs, which is madness. Because the Blu-ray for me is in between HD on streaming and Ultra HD. It's a better bit rate and more crisp, clearer than just HD on streaming. So it's better than that. And like I say, the movies are cheap and it's beautiful to have in your collection. So now, and for me personally, it's a great time to be buying them. And even DVDs, like your favorite TV series and box sets. I literally got Two and a Half Men, the entire box set, from one of our used store in the UK, and it cost me £10. I've got the entire Dawson's Creek for £8. I don't know if you can even watch Dawson's Creek anywhere, and that's the thing. These you can't always rely on streaming services for starters. I don't want to go in the whole rabbit hole of that, but sometimes we've just got to look to the past to understand the future a bit. Now, I'm collecting VHS tapes. They're not particularly expensive, but they're rare. That's where the problem's coming. And I speak a lot about that. There's specific ones like Gremlins, Gremlins 2, the first Ghostbusters, Beetlejuice. There's a few others, and there's maybe 4 listings for those. Now, some of those there's an exception to it. So, for instance, Ghostbusters, you can buy a double pack where both films are on one cassette, and there's plenty of them. But in terms of collectibles, if you want the individual movies, they're few and far between. I was fortunate to get mine for about £15 each. Now they're about £25 each minimum. They go up to £60, some even further. And that's where it's going. But it's not the point of the price, irrelevant to me. If you want it enough and it's collectible, I think it's worth it. Because people will buy, for instance, let's say a figurine like this. People will buy a figurine like that, maybe pay 50 quid, 60 quid. I don't know what you pay for it. Can't remember what I paid for it. But the point is, if you pay that, then there's no reason you wouldn't pay for the box of a movie that you absolutely love. Because it's similar, isn't it? It's nostalgic. So for me personally, it's not always about specifically the movie. It's what it represents, a period of time. It's not a replica. It's the actual item that existed when it released. It's cool. But of course, I like to be able to watch the movie too. But the point in there is there's only 4 available. We may get to that point with movies in DVD and Blu-ray. I don't think we'll get to that point personally because I think we've learned from the past a lot of people. So there's a lot of people collecting now, whereas I don't think there's a lot of people collecting VHS tapes, for instance. Discs came and we all started throwing out our cassettes because it was pointless. And I think that's where I think there's a different trend happening. So personally, I don't think we're going to have a problem acquiring movies in the future, but it'll probably get more expensive for specific ones. The real problem we're going to have is the same way we have with VHS, is faulty machines. So if you want to get VHS, that's perfectly fine, but you've got to find a working VCR. You'll find most save for parts faulty. You have to learn how to fix them and fix them fast. There's YouTube videos. Some parts are complicated, some parts not. It might be worth a risk and take a chance trying to fix it. But the point is, you're relying on old hardware, and how reliable is that? For me, my VCR is the one I bought personally, brand new, in the early 2000s. It's a really nice one. I remember paying a lot of money for it. It was a premium model, so I know it's great. I know it's not like rubbish, so it's worth fixing if it has a problem. But I'm thinking of getting another one anyway, just as a backup. I think backups are good. For instance, I have 2 Blu-ray players, which obviously play DVD, so that's great. Multiple CD players, so that's good as well. What I'm thinking of doing now is getting, and this is what I'm trying to address to people really, now is the time. Now is the time. Things are not particularly expensive right now, but you're going to get to a point very soon, I think in the next 5 years, where you can't buy new. You won't be able to buy new Blu-ray players, in my opinion. You may obviously you can still use game consoles, so that's useful. But game consoles, as we've seen, I don't know if anyone's aware of it, but you've got the PS5 and the Xbox Series X has come out. But what you'd expect is the previous consoles to drop in price drastically. They haven't. That's ridiculous. So PS5, for instance, let's say you can get it sometimes for £330. A PS5 you can get it for £330 sometimes, without the disc drive, of course. But you're still seeing PS4 Pro, for instance, and that'd be about £200. So it's only £130 cheaper than the latest console. That doesn't make sense. Obviously, one's got a disc drive, one doesn't. But you start going down that path. It's just sometimes the consoles are not. I think it's because of the disc drives, to be honest, and how compatible they are with previous games. I think the latest generation hasn't got a lot of unique exclusives. They're just remasters of the previous. There's all little reasons. But we're fortunate that consoles from the PS3 had Blu-ray, so anything from the PS3 forward has Blu-ray at a minimum. Some went up to Ultra HD Blu-rays with the latest consoles, and DVD was Xbox 360. I don't think it was. I don't know. Actually, I think DVD may have even been available in the PS2. I'm pretty sure it was. Worth looking into. So anyway, consoles are an option, of course, going forward if we run out of disk drives. But is it practical? So then you've got a problem with other things, and a lot of time it's DVD drives that are widely available, not Blu-ray. So I say, for me personally now, I've recently just bought a Blu-ray writer for the computer, which obviously plays Blu-ray, CD, DVDs. But it also can burn to those, which really makes it really, really versatile. And it can extract the movies and CDs from them. So it gives me a digital library as well. That's incredible, isn't it, for something? It cost me £70. In the long run, £70 is nothing. Today, it's a bit, you're like, oh, should I pay that or not? In the future, you're going to think that's pennies. That's ridiculous, because you're not going to be able to buy these things. They're not going to be widely available. So a Blu-ray drive cost me 70. A DVD version only, without the Blu-ray, would be about £30. Now, cast yourself 5 years into the future. You won't be able to buy these new. You're only going to be You're only going to be able to buy it used. And even if there is a new one, it's probably going to be very knockoff brands, cheap, not very good, not reliable. And I think personally that's where it's going to get to. People are going to be, if you can find one at a reasonable price, it's probably going to be an aftermarket brand that isn't reliable at all. Both of mine are Zeus, so I gave one to my daughter, the DVD drive. It left me without one, which is why they're like, I need to buy another one. But if I'm going to buy another one, I may as well spend the extra £40 and make it a Blu-ray one, which is what I've done now. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to acquire them in bits. So I'm not going to spend a load at once, but every now and again I'm just going to buy another one, and I'm just stacking them up, and I'm just going to have a cupboard full of them. But I don't care. In the long run, what does it matter? You might look and think, oh, why have you got all them? Does it matter? It didn't cost a lot. That's the point, isn't it? Is you're allowing yourself the option that it doesn't die out for you. So, for instance, I'll buy some blank discs as well. Hopefully, they survive. Keep them all cellophaned up. It just gives me options as well. So, for instance, I'll buy a couple of DVD writers. I know they're £30. They're a good brand. They're a Zeus, and they're working fine for my daughter. They work fine for me. They're USB 2 as well, not USB 3, because the USB is backwards compatible. So that actually makes it good. Although USB 3 is faster and better, literally, effectively, with USB 3, you only need one USB cable going into your computer. USB 2 requires two USB sockets, but I have it connected to like a multi one. It's a USB powered anyway. So I've got a USB 3 multi adapter thing. And because USB 3 is fast and powerful, it powers that anyway. And so normally you'd say don't put them in a multi thing because it can't give enough power. It's giving it enough power, it works. So we know it works. So by having USB 2.0, we know it's compatible with the slower ports. So if you had to, I'm in the future, I don't think it's going to matter, but who knows? But yeah, so I'm going to get 2 more DVD writers for their £30 each. That'd be £60, and I'll get at least another Blu-ray writer, which was £70. That's what I'll do at a bare minimum. I was even thinking when I got my one whether I should get the Ultra HD. There's one model that I know is Ultra HD Blu-ray, and that was £100. I didn't really want to go there because I'm not sure if I'm going to collect them. But if we project ourselves again 5 years in the future, 10 years in the future, old 4K Blu-rays have not been as I wouldn't say popular, but they just haven't been bought as much. They're out of most people's price range. It's not worth the upgrade or this. That means it's going to be more desirable in future, old 4K. If we put ourselves 10 years in the future, I think they're going to be rare, and they'll be hot commodity. So you're going to want to be able to play them. Now, the latest game consoles can play them. But we don't know if the next generation of consoles is going to have disk drives because they look like they're getting phased out. Yeah, we're seeing it with consoles. There's digital-only boxes. So if they remove the option in future, that means there's only a very short window of game consoles that actually supported Blu-ray, and even more limited that had Ultra HD compatibility. So, again, it's just what people need to think. If you're interested in getting physical media at any phase, it's worth looking at it now. That's all I would say. The discs themselves are cheap. You can get a lot of Blu-rays cheap now, a lot of DVDs cheap. And it's just collecting what you want. That's personally what I'm doing. I'm introducing my daughter to films that she hasn't seen before, and she's really enjoying them, and it's great because I'm like, I think you're going to like this one. And you're not finding it. The streaming services are killing old movies. Some genuinely great movies. If I mention, the one I showed her yesterday was Trial and Error, and I bet a lot of people haven't even heard of that in their life. Trial and Error, and it's got Jeff Daniels and I think it's Michael Richards. So Michael Richards is Kramer from Seinfeld, and Jeff Daniels we all know from Dumb and Dumber. Of course, he's done a lot more than that. But they're both in this film. Charlize Theron, she obviously got on to become mega movie star, but back then she wasn't. So you get to see her in more of a humble performance. And you got the guy that does the in My Cousin Vinny, the one that stutters as a lawyer. He's the judge, and he plays it completely different. It's an incredible film. And then I showed her My Cousin Vinny, and she preferred Trial and Error. And I said that's interesting because My Cousin Vinny is the more popular and widely known movie. And both for me are hilarious and great. But again, we'll talk about one movie here, Trial and Error. Have many people heard of it? Yeah, so if you go by just streaming services, you'll never know these films. Bushwhacked. I wonder if anyone's heard of Bushwhacked. Now, there will be people that have heard of it, and that's hilarious. That's got Daniel Stern. That's one of the villains from Home Alone. I can't remember their names in Home Alone now. The taller one with the curly hair. He's in Bushwhacked. So effectively, he's on the run from the police, and he goes to do Boy Scouts, and he hasn't got a clue, of course. So he's completely out of his depth with, with these kids that know more than he does. But it's a funny hell film. Are we seeing that on streaming services? I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. I talk a lot about the movie Michael. I absolutely loved growing up. It's in about 1996. I remember going to cinema to watch that and Phenomenon, both featuring John Travolta. So I know these films personally, and in the UK at least, they never came to DVD. They definitely not. They're not available. There's another one, Indian in the Cupboard, I have on VHS. Never made it to DVD or Blu-ray. So, and they're not on the streaming services. So films are dying out, and people are just unaware because they never knew of them in the past. I'm aware of a lot of films. I was collecting books and I was putting books on my bookshelf, and I love books. Of course, I mean, being a writer, obviously I appreciate the media, but I do recognise that when it comes to collecting, it doesn't mean you'll never read the book again, but some books you may only read, like for instance, I can read Stephen King Misery for the rest of my life. I can read that on a regular annually. So that's a book that will get worn down. That's one I'll keep available near me at all times because I love that book and it's just rereadable. Some just become trophies, and that takes up a lot of storage space just to have a trophy. So for instance, I'm putting them more out the way now if I'm not reading them. And movies, for me personally, when I was younger, I had a massive bookcase and I had all my films. And I had a neighbour a young similar age to me would ask their parents like if they could ask mine. We weren't really friends or anything. Can they if I could if they could borrow some films? So they'd come round to go look through my films and I'd lend them to them. And that's how many films I had, And I loved collecting movies, and I still do. And the fact is, yeah, it's rewatchable. You're not looking at it as a trophy. It's literally something you can watch regularly. You can go up to your collection and you're always going to watch something off that collection. Whereas I think of books on a bookshelf, for the most part, they just sit as a trophy. So I was going through a phase where I was going to start collecting my books and keep them on show, but it's like, for what? But the movies I will use over and over again. I'd argue I use my Blu-rays and DVDs more than I use my CDs. But again, if you've got a Blu-ray DVD player, you can also play CDs anyway. So now you're expanding your physical media collection to get more. While we're on the topic, I'm not collecting vinyl so much anymore. It was a bit of a fad for me. I love it. I think it's cool. There's a lot of maintenance involved, but the prices are outrageous. It doesn't make sense to me as a platform. It looks cool because the cases are really big, so you get this nice poster-sized image, but the prices are scandalous. You can get an awful lot of CDs, like an awful lot of CDs, for the price of one vinyl record. If you go new for CDs, for instance, you're ranging from about £7 to about £13. Vinyls now are going up to like 35 quid, all because they've got a funny colour to them. It's like this is just ridiculous. This is just collectibles that are getting out of control. There's no gain in that. It's still only the music that you'd get on a CD. So even CDs, for instance, you can probably get four CDs for the price of a vinyl record. If you go used market, of course, you can get even more. Up to people where they source their material, but you go used on vinyl, they're not very cheap. I've got some good deals, but I'm recognise it's getting hard to find the deals, and I'm not sure it's worth the maintenance of the vinyl record player. CDs I can burn. This is where the issue comes. CDs I can actually easily transfer to my computer and have a digital library, and then I can put it on my iPod as well. And of course, you can just listen to it through your computer. It's just nice. You'll become your own little DJ. So I personally think these portable disk drives. I can't really show it because I've got it all plugged in now. Try. I don't think it's going to show on camera. You can see at the bottom of the screen a little bit. I'm trying my best to do this. It's too dark. It's too dark. Mine stands up like this. Oh, it's just not good. Camera angles are terrible. But anyway, that's my portable one, and I can back up all my movies. I can back up all my CDs. And I just think right now that's going to be a godsend. I think the ability to have a digital collection in the future, where you're not bound by these streaming companies, because how much do you think the streaming services are going to charge in future? That's the question, isn't it? Is it going to be £20 a month? Is it going to be £30 a month? Are there going to be like 4 different versions of this? Are the music platforms going to keep expanding and it just gets more and more expensive? Makes sense as to why these companies are buying a lot of the libraries of the artists and they're paying fortunes for it because they can see how much they can exploit it for the rest of time. It's crazy. But when you've got a physical collection or one that you've digitized, you haven't got to pay anyone a penny to access that content. You can watch it for the rest of your life for free. You paid once and you can watch it for the rest of your life without ever paying again. And that's frightening to the streaming services. They don't want that. They want you to keep paying for the same content for the rest of your life. So the price of a disk drive, for instance, is pennies compared to what you'll pay for the rest in the future. For me, goes beyond the finances, though. It's about ownership. You know, if I'm wealthy in the future, for instance, I'm doing really well for myself. It's not about, oh, I can't afford it. It's like, I don't want to pay it. It's the principle of it all for me. We're giving away too much of our power to other companies that are just trying to destroy. I've spoke about the iPod. If you was to get one now, it's really hard to set it up and actually get it working. You have to get a very specific version of software that allows you to continue using it. And that's because Apple are trying to really just get rid of any ability to watch something that they don't earn any money from. So yeah, anyway, I don't want to keep going on, but there's plenty of options in the digital and the physical market. And I just think now is the time. So randomly throughout the year now, I'm going to be acquiring more VHS players. I'll be looking at them. I'll be trying to tinker with them as well because I can fix to a certain extent. I know roughly what I'm looking at with normal fixes if it's chewing a tape slightly. I've still got learning. I'm at very early stages. I can take a tape cassette apart now and I can replace the tape in it and put a different one in it. So if there's a tape cassette that's actually damaged and actually snapped and broken, the plastic coming off, I can change the reel of tape in there and put a different movie in it. That's pretty cool. These are things you learn as you go. So I'm going to try and get some more VHS players because I need backups. Otherwise, my movie collection becomes obsolete if something ever happens to the player. Another positive is I recently found the remote for my VCR, which I'm like, wow, that adds value, of course. So if we get more of them, I'm definitely getting, like I said, I'm definitely going to get at least 3 more portable disc drives, 2 DVD ones, 1 Blu-ray, and then after that, I may even get more Blu-ray ones. Because I love the platform. I didn't invest this much and buy all these films just to let it go to waste, you know. I don't care if in the future everybody's streaming everything and they're watching it in VR and all that shit. I'll still sit there with my systems. So I've got my gaming laptop, but I've always thought, sell, replace it with new. I think in this instance now, my gaming laptop, I'm probably going to keep even when it's not very good. Like it's really powerful anyway. But I'm probably going to keep it just because I know it works with all my system stuff. It works with my disk drives. And later on in the future, you could just disable the internet and keep everything offline, can't you? And it's a really nice screen. And that's how I'm going to start thinking in the future. I'm going to think in future terms now where things are getting eroded. You see it now. There's no disk drives with your laptops. What else is it going to remove? You know, are we going to lose hard drive storage space? Are we going to start getting it so everything's streaming? It seems far-fetched, but in the future, we may very well be in a situation where everything's streamed. So I mean, it's just a start, isn't it? It's like, where do you see the future and start maybe adjusting accordingly? Like I said, it can seem a bit bizarre to be collecting multiples of something that would seem a waste of money, but it's not a lot of money. And you've got peace of mind because otherwise the alternative is if you ever get into collecting it later, you have to go down the used market and you just don't know what the quality is going to be like. I've been looking at tape cassette Walkmans. Obviously, Walkman we know is Sony. So we'd actually just say Walkman, even if it's a portable cassette player, which would be other like Panasonic and things. But Walkman itself is only Sony products because they're the ones that created the name Walkman. But we'd still say Walkman for anything. So the trouble is I'm looking at a lot of them and a lot of them are faulty. If they're not faulty, they're like cheaper brands. So I was looking at the Sony ones and they're very expensive. And you can't help but think, I should have just kept my one when I was younger. Why do we keep throwing away products thinking they're obsolete when something new comes? I think now is the time to start recognizing that before something new comes, preserve what you have. Make a time capsule because you're going to want it later. We're seeing it now. Like, I want a CRT TV, the old-fashioned ones with the cathode light in it. back in the day, they're heavier, but they're nostalgic. They have a certain image to them. So if I put something retro on it, it'll feel retro, a bit of its period. I love the 80s and 90s. And now you have to go down the used market. Yet the used market are getting expensive because they're recognized and they're becoming trendy. The trouble is, I know the brand names, and I know I had better tickets. I never went crap. I always had decent quality TVs, like Sony. Um, and now if you want a Sony, for instance, you're going to have to pay a lot of money for Sony. Otherwise, you're getting all these cheap brands. And I would never have bought those cheap brands when I was younger. Some of these TVs, these CRT TVs, they don't even have SCART sockets. And that's a big sell. So again, that's a little tip. If you see a TV and it only has an aerial socket, don't get it. I wouldn't get it. You're better off paying a little bit more for SCART support. SCART support was superior image and sound quality than just a normal aerial cable. That's going to be very limited. So effectively, if you're plugging devices in, you're going to get a limited experience because of the inputs. So it's worth, I think, make sure you definitely get one with a SCART socket. That's my personal tip. I'm not really sure about getting the combo ones when he's got a built-in VCR because I think they're going to be too complicated to fix when they break, and they naturally obviously do break. So, I mean, getting a true tape out of my video VCR, for instance, in worst case scenario, it's like 4 screws, two at the back, 2 at the side. You literally just pull the casing off, and you can easily get to it if you really need to. I don't know how you would do that with a TV. So the built-in ones aren't going to be much more practical. But no, this is me just really trying to give people that peace of mind, really, to say, look, now is the time, I would say, to really start looking at what you might want to collect in the future, and especially what you want to collect now, and what options you're going to have then, because going used is not ideal at all. But I'm finding that personally now. That's the only option I have with some media. But again, do your research. For instance, I've got a cassette deck for my CD player. It's a very similar model, just slightly offset. It's like a little connector that doesn't quite fit, but it still works. I just lose functionality. For instance, if I use the remote, if I want to turn the CD player off, it will only turn the CD and mini disc and stereo part off. It won't turn the tape deck off because it doesn't have that ability to function with it. It's only audio cables in and out. So that has no functionality when it comes to remote. But if I had that little connector, it would turn the whole thing off. But it's such a little thing. It's literally a little button. I can just turn it off manually. But again, it's worth looking into things like that, compatibility and things. Try and get a system that's complete. It'll be useful. But yeah, I think if you're going to get into records and vinyls, you've got to really look into maintaining it. I've recently had to get a little vinyl cleaning spongy thing. I don't know what the hell it is. And literally, it just gets all the dust and stuff off it. Then you need to get a cleaning brush for your needles. My daughter's record player recently, she got a new vinyl for Christmas, and it sounded terrible. I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I straight away just thought, I bet it's the needle. I bet it's the needle. We have to just replace the needle. Let's have a look. So I spent about £8 on a pack of needles. Replaced it, and it sounded perfect. And it's like, oh, there you go. It was the needle. And I'm seeing a lot of people complaining that theirs is making horrible noises, and all they've got to do is replace the needle for the most part. Give it a fresh sound. But for me, the maintenance of it's a bit too much for me. It's a bit annoying. But I think maybe they're easier to repair than CDs, because CD a lot of time it's going to be lenses, and I think that's a bigger issue altogether. Which is my main concern, really. Which is why I want multiples. If I ever have a problem with one stop working, last thing I want to do is I can't even go to the shop and buy one. That's mental. And I'm finding anyway, for personal experience, there's less options. There's a lot of, like, through the computer sellers, for instance, with these external ones, maybe there's only 8 products now. Like, when you're looking, if you go on Amazon, I think you're only maybe finding about 8 as well. Maybe 3 of them are crap brands that you don't even know that exist. The others are better brands, but they're getting higher and higher. For instance, my one I bought for £70. It was free in stock from one seller through Amazon. After that, it was different sellers for the same product. And the free sold. I bought one, and it said 2 left. And then I kept monitoring it because I was just intrigued. Is anyone else interested in collecting these? And all of a sudden, they sold out, and now it's gone from £70 to £100. And it's like, that's what you're going to see, though. You say about try and catch it when you can get it at a decent price, but the problem is the prices may never come down, especially if they're becoming rarer. So anyway, I just think now is the perfect time, like literally the perfect time to collect before everything becomes obsolete and you're going down the absolute used market. The used market for films is great, but at the same time, you can still get good deals on brand new at the moment with Blu-rays and DVDs, of course. But they're very similar price now, and Blu-rays are superior to DVDs, so you might as well just jump on the Blu-rays. But anyway, thought I'd just share my little bit of advice there and insights. Hopefully, it'll give people a nudge to start collecting as well, because I think it'd be a bit sad if you decided you was interested and it was too late.